The girl found the doll just past the old service road, where the pine trees grew too close together, their needles whispering like they were gossiping about her footsteps. The sun was already sinking, painting the snow in watery orange light, and that was when she saw it. Something porcelain white, half buried under a crooked pine root. The doll's face was turned upward, eyes wide open, glassy blue and strangely unfrosted despite the cold. Her blonde curls were tangled with pine needles, but her dress, an old-fashioned blue calico, looked almost clean, as if someone had placed her there gently, not dropped her. The girl hesitated only a second before scooping the doll up. She said nothing about the faint warmth she thought she felt in its porcelain chest. She told herself it was her imagination, the way cold fingers can trick the mind. At home, her mother noticed immediately. "Where did you get that?" she asked, but the girl just shrugged. The mother stepped outside to look at the spot her daughter pointed to. She saw the indentation in the snow where the doll had rested, an oval outline softened by the breeze. But the snow wasn't frozen there. It had melted, leaving exposed needles and dark soil, like something warm had been lying there for hours. Something alive. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, the mother woke to a soft clink. A tiny sound, porcelain on wood. She walked into the girl's room and froze. The doll wasn't in the bed anymore. It was standing on the windowsill, facing outside, its painted lips parted slightly in what looked almost like a breath. And outside, under the moonlight, tiny footprints dotted the snow, small barefoot prints leading from the dark line of the forest straight toward the house, stopping just beneath the window. The mother felt the room tilt a little. The doll didn't move, but its head was angled as if listening to something still out there among the pines, something that might come back. The next morning felt strangely muted, like the house itself was holding its breath. The girl sat at the kitchen table, brushing crumbs off the doll's blue dress. The mother tried not to watch, but every movement of that porcelain face made her stomach tighten. Outside, the pine trees swayed even though there was no wind. That afternoon, the girl asked to play in the yard. The mother agreed but kept glancing out the window. The snow was deep, untouched, except for a thin trail of small footprints that she'd swept away earlier with a broom, trying to convince herself they belonged to some animal. A raccoon, maybe, a fox, anything but a child. But the prints had toes. While the girl made uneven snow angels, the mother heard something, a faint sound carried from the direction of the pines, almost like a child laughing, high, short, playful. But it didn't echo like a real voice. It came in one sharp note and cut off instantly, as if someone had turned a dial. The mother stepped onto the porch. "Did you hear that?" she called. The girl didn't turn. "Hear what?" The doll lay propped against the base of an old lawn chair, its glass eyes aimed directly at the tree line, not at the girl, at the forest. The mother walked over and picked it up, feeling an unpleasant rush of warm porcelain against her chilled fingers. That warmth again. She placed the doll under her arm like something fragile but unwelcome. As they went inside, the girl paused and looked back toward the woods. "They're calling," she said quietly. The mother froze. "Who?" The girl blinked, as if surprised by her own words. I don't know. I just heard them." That night, the mother couldn't sleep. The house creaked in old familiar ways, the furnace clicking, the pipes settling. But beneath those sounds, something else pulsed, a soft tapping, like tiny fingers brushing against wood. She followed the sound to the girl's room. The doll wasn't where they had left it. It stood again on the windowsill, forehead tilted toward the night, staring into the same stretch of dark forest. This time, the mother saw them too. Between the trees, barely visible under the moonlight, figures shifted, low to the ground, small, moving in short, jerky paths, like they were learning how to walk all over again. The mother stepped back, breath catching. The doll's head slowly angled, as if acknowledging her presence, though it never truly moved. Outside, the pine branches rustled, not from wind, but from something weaving through them, something coming closer. The father didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or anything he couldn't fix with a wrench or a roll of electrical tape. So when the mother finally told him about the footprints and the doll's movements, he didn't argue. He just went to the garage and came back with a small motion-activated trail camera he used for deer watching. "Something's messing with us," he said. "Let's find out what." He set the camera facing the backyard, its lens aimed directly at the girl's window. The doll sat on the dresser behind the glass, still and innocent as a newborn. The mother kept glancing at it anyway, as if waiting for the moment it would breathe. That night they went to bed early, both pretending they weren't listening for strange sounds. The house stayed quiet, almost unnaturally so. Even the furnace hummed lower, like it didn't want to disturb something. At dawn, the father retrieved the camera. The screen flickered, loading each recorded frame one by one. First, still images, snow, yard, pines. Then, movement. Tiny shapes flitting across the edge of the trees, too fast to be animals, too low to be adults. The camera caught the motion as pale smears, blurred outlines no taller than a toddler, darting forward in uneven leaps. The father frowned. Probably raccoons. But raccoons didn't look like that, and raccoons didn't stop suddenly, all at once, as if something commanded them to freeze. On the next clip, every pale shape stood perfectly still at the tree line, a row of small silhouettes facing the house. The father tapped the screen, confused. Why aren't they moving? Then came the part that made the mother's breath hitch. A faint dot of light appeared in the girl's window. The camera zoomed slightly as the motion sensor adjusted. The doll. It was in the window again, pressed against the glass, its face turned toward the forest. Its eyes glinted strangely, catching the camera's infrared glow. And the figures in the trees shifted. Not toward the camera, not toward the house, toward the doll. One by one their heads tilted in the same direction, as if listening to an order given silently. The father rewound, squinting. Where's our daughter during this? The mother swallowed. Asleep. She was asleep. But the girl's window was open a crack, open just enough for cold air or whispers to slip through. When they looked up from the screen, the doll wasn't on the dresser anymore. It sat on the floor right at the threshold of the girl's room, as if waiting for permission to go farther, or inviting something in. By the next afternoon, the mother could no longer pretend she understood what was happening. The girl seemed fine, too fine, humming to herself, brushing the doll's curls like she was tending to a living child. The father buried himself in work outside, trying to convince himself that the camera footage had a logical explanation. The mother went next door. Their neighbor, Mrs. Westhaven, had lived on the street longer than anyone. older, sharp-eyed, and full of stories people usually laughed off. But today, the mother didn't feel like laughing. When Mrs. Westhaven opened the door, she didn't even greet her. She just looked down at the mother's shaking hands and said softly, "You saw something." The mother nodded. The old woman led her inside, poured tea neither of them drank, and took a slow breath. "That grove behind your yard," she said, tapping a thin finger against the window, "wasn't always trees. Used to be an old children's colony. Not an orphanage exactly, not a school either. More like a place for lost things, lost kids." The mother felt her throat tighten. What happened to them? Mrs. Westhaven's lips pressed into a thin line. No one knows. It was winter, just like now. People from town went to deliver supplies and found the cabins empty, beds unmade, bowls on the tables, fire still burning, every child gone, vanished. The house seemed to grow colder as she spoke. "Some said wolves," the woman continued. "Some said illness, but others found footprints, small ones, leading into the forest. But the strangest part was how deep the prints went, like the children kept walking even when the snow got too thick for their legs to lift." The mother gripped the edge of her chair. "What about the dolls?" The old woman froze. Her eyes sharpened. "Ah," she whispered, "so that part's true." "What part?" "The colony caretaker, she had a habit. Each child got a porcelain doll, same face, same dress. She said the dolls helped her keep track of them. People thought it was just sentimental nonsense until the children disappeared." The mother shivered. "What happened to the dolls?" "They found one in the snow near the forest line, still warm." The mother's breath caught. "And they never found the others?" "No." A pause. "Nor the children." The mother stood abruptly. She didn't remember walking out or thanking the woman. She only remembered the final thing the old neighbor called after her. "If your girl brought one of those dolls home, you need to watch who's watching her back." The mother didn't stop moving until she reached her own front door. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. She rushed to the girl's room. The doll was gone, and the window wide open. The cold hit her first, a sharp, unnatural blast that rolled out of the girl's room like someone had opened a freezer door. The curtains fluttered inward, and for a split second the mother thought she saw something pale slip away from the window, something small, quick, and barefoot. She rushed to the sill. Snow dusted the floor beneath it in a neat circle. Tiny grains glittered like crushed glass. Outside, the girl stood barefoot in the yard, hugging the doll tightly against her chest. Her nightgown clung to her legs, damp with frost. The mother tore down the stairs and threw open the back door. "Sweetheart, what are you doing out here?" she cried, wrapping her arms around the girl. The girl's skin felt wrong. Not freezing, not warm, just drained, like something had pulled the heat straight from her bones. "I had to let her see," the girl whispered. "See what?" The girl pointed toward the woods. Snow stretched out smooth and untouched, except for one new trail, a single line of tiny footprints leading right up to the house, directly to the back door, not from the forest, from the porch, from inside. The mother stiffened. "Who came in?" The girl didn't answer. She only pressed her cheek to the porcelain head.
The father appeared behind them, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" The mother didn't speak. She didn't move. She just stared at the line of footprints because something about them wasn't right. They stopped at the threshold. Only one set. No returning prints. No signs of someone leaving, as if whatever entered the house never left. The father grabbed a flashlight. "I'll check the rooms." But the girl suddenly jerked around, clutching the doll like a shield. "No," she said sharply. Her voice didn't sound like hers. The mother knelt. "Honey, why not?" The girl's eyes flicked upward toward the second floor. "She's still choosing." The mother felt her stomach drop. "Choosing what?" The girl's jaw tightened. Her breath puffed out in pale mist. "Who goes back with them?" The back door creaked behind them, though no one touched it. A soft scrape echoed from somewhere upstairs, light, deliberate, rhythmic, like small feet pacing, waiting, counting. The father took a step toward the stairs. That was when the girl whispered, almost too quiet to hear. She said, "They're already in the house." And the scraping stopped, all at once, as if whatever was upstairs had finally noticed it had been heard.
For the rest of the night, the family stayed downstairs, lights on, the house too silent for comfort. The father moved from window to window, checking locks, checking shadows, checking anything that let him avoid going upstairs. The mother sat on the couch with the girl, who held the doll on her lap like it was some kind of guardian or accomplice. At one point, the mother gently tried to take the doll away. The girl's fingers tightened instantly, and her voice dropped to a low, warning whisper. "She said not to." The mother froze. "Why?" "She's showing me who's cold." The girl lifted the doll's hand. It was raised at an odd angle, like it was pointing, not vaguely, directly toward the hallway that led to the stairs. The father swallowed hard. "I'm ending this." He took 2 steps toward the hall, and the flashlight flickered out. The room went dim, and the furnace groaned as the temperature dropped sharply, as if the house itself were exhaling frost. The mother wrapped her arms around the girl. "Please don't go up there," she whispered. But the father was stubborn. He stepped into the hallway and then stopped cold, because the doll's pointing hand slowly rotated, its finger tilting until it aimed directly at him. The girl watched, wide-eyed, entranced. "She says you're losing heat." The father touched his cheek. It felt numb, too numb, frostbite numb. A soft patter of tiny feet echoed from the top of the stairs. Then something small and pale appeared, half hidden behind the banister, just a shape, just a suggestion of a child-sized figure. Its head cocked sideways, as if studying the father. The doll's hand lowered. The girl breathed out, almost relieved. "It's not him," she said. The figure at the top of the stairs turned its head, slowly, too slowly. Then it pointed too, down the stairs, toward the living room, toward the mother. The girl clutched the doll tightly and whispered, "She says the cold one is you." The mother didn't move at first. She just stared at the small figure on the staircase, unsure whether it was pointing at her or through her. The girl's words echoed in the cold air, thick and wrong. "She says the cold one is you." The father stepped protectively in front of his wife. "Don't listen to that. It's just—" He didn't finish, because the figure on the stairs stepped fully into view. It wasn't a child. Not anymore. It was small, yes, and soft-looking, with pale, bare feet and thin limbs, but its body shimmered faintly, like a reflection in ice. Its face was blank, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth skin with hints of features beneath, as if struggling to remember what a face should look like. It lifted one hand again, pointing downward. Not at the mother, at the doll. The doll's painted eyes glinted, catching the weak lamplight. The girl tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. "She says it's hungry." The mother's breath caught. "What is?" The girl looked up slowly. "All of them." More tiny footsteps echoed overhead, soft patters crossing the hallway, brushing along walls, tapping against floorboards. The ceiling felt alive, shifting, settling, like dozens of tiny bodies were moving in careful patterns. The father swept his flashlight beam at the staircase, but the light sputtered, dimmed, then quietly died in his hand. His breath fogged the air, frost formed along his beard. The mother felt it too, a draining sensation, like something inside her was being pulled gently outward, not painful, but weakening, sleepy, heavy. The figure on the stairs took another step. The girl clutched the doll tighter. "She says you're giving them warmth, but you don't get to choose how much." The mother staggered, gripping the back of a chair. The father grabbed her arm. "We're getting out, now." But before they could move, the doll rotated in the girl's hands, jerky, unnatural, like someone was twisting it from the inside. Its arm lifted and pointed toward the front door. At first, the mother didn't understand. Then she heard it, a soft knock, 3 tiny taps, as if someone too small to reach the handle was politely asking to be let in. The girl whispered, "They're back." The mother's teeth began to chatter, not from fear, from cold. Cold that wasn't hers anymore. The knocking didn't stop. 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps again. Too light to be an adult, too rhythmic to be an animal. The father moved toward the front door, but the instant he stepped forward, every light in the house flickered. The girl's head snapped toward him, her voice low and sharp. "Don't open it. She said they're waiting." The mother clutched her own elbows, shivering violently. The cold wasn't coming from the winter outside. It was sinking down the walls, radiating from the ceiling, flooding the house from rooms untouched. The doll turned its head. Not a full rotation, just a tiny jerk, as if acknowledging someone outside. Then its porcelain mouth, still in a painted smile, seemed to crack at the corner, not breaking, widening. The knocking grew louder, not harder, more numerous. First 1 set of taps, then 2, then 3, a chorus of tiny fists tapping politely, begging entrance, like an army of lost children, too well-mannered to break a door down. The mother's breath hitched. "They're surrounding the house!" The girl nodded calmly, as if this were nothing unexpected. "They follow warmth. They always have." The father grabbed a chair and wedged it under the doorknob. "We're not letting anything in." But the doll lifted its arm again. This time it pointed at the window. The mother spun toward it and nearly screamed. Small shapes pressed against the glass, dozens of them, bare heads, pale fingers. For a moment they looked like frost patterns, just smudges, just shadows, but then one lifted its hand and dragged a tiny palm down the window, leaving a streak of melted condensation. The girl smiled faintly. "They found us." Then, as if answering some silent call, the shapes vanished from the glass all at once. No footsteps, no scurrying, just gone. The father exhaled in relief until the house answered with its own sound. A thump from the attic, a second thump, a dragging noise, light, quick, like dozens of feet skittering over insulation. The mother grabbed the girl. "They're already inside!" The girl didn't resist. She simply tilted her head toward the ceiling. "She says they came to take back what's theirs." The father's voice trembled. "What is theirs?" The girl's eyes glimmered with a strange, unfocused warmth. "The heat, the breath, the pieces of life they lost." Then something above them creaked, not in the attic this time, but directly on the hallway floorboards. A tiny footstep, followed by another, then another, coming slowly, deliberately toward the living room. The doll lowered its hand, the tapping outside stopped, and in the sudden silence, the girl whispered, "They're choosing who goes with them tonight."
The footsteps grew slower as they reached the edge of the hallway, as if the small things moving there were gathering, deciding who would step out first. The father gripped a fireplace poker with shaking hands. The mother pulled the girl close, though her arms felt weak, drained, as if the cold gnawing at her bones had grown teeth. "We need to run for the car," the father whispered. But the girl shook her head. "She says it won't matter. They can follow warmth anywhere." The mother swallowed. "Why are they here? What do they want?" The girl blinked, almost annoyed. "They want to finish what started in the colony." The mother felt a jolt of dread. What colony? The father hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. "I didn't tell you," he said, voice low, "but I went looking today." He unwrapped the object. A small leather-bound notebook, the cover warped from age, corners darkened with moisture. "I found this near an old foundation deeper in the pines," he said. "Looked like a cellar collapsed years ago." The mother grabbed it, flipping through brittle pages filled with cramped handwriting. "What is it?" she whispered. "Caretaker's diary," he said. The girl leaned forward, eyes unblinking. On one page, written shakily, almost frantically, the mother read aloud. "The children say their dolls whisper at night. The cold follows them. I hear footsteps outside the cabins, too many to count. They want warmth. They want to come inside. The dolls are not toys. They're conduits." The ink on the next page blurred, smeared by water or tears or something darker. "They have chosen a vessel, a living one. The smallest one always goes first." The mother snapped the diary shut. The girl's voice came out small, distant. "She says it was supposed to be her." Before either parent could react, a soft rustle came from the far end of the hallway. A pale shape emerged, tiny, unsteady, faceless, its body trembling like a reflection on disturbed water. Then another appeared behind it, and another, and another. Dozens. The mother's breath shuddered in her chest. "They're children," the girl corrected her quietly. "Not anymore." The doll in her arms tilted its head, and the faceless figures moved as one, stepping closer. "They've come," she whispered, "to claim the new vessel." The mother felt a cold stab of terror. "Who?" The girl looked up at her with a softness that felt wrong for such a moment. "She doesn't know yet," she said. "She needs to see which of us has the strongest heat." The figures took another step. The temperature dropped, the lights flickered, and the doll's porcelain lips cracked, just slightly, as if preparing to speak.
The figures filled the hallway, pale shapes trembling with cold hunger. The mother felt the temperature drop so sharply her breath turned to frost in the air. The father tightened his grip on the poker, though his hands shook violently. The doll's lips, cracked earlier, split just a little more as its porcelain jaw shifted. A faint sound escaped it, not a word, a breath. The girl held it gently, reverently. "She says the vessel is almost ready," the girl whispered, "but she needs to taste the heat to know whose it is." The mother staggered back. "No, no, we're leaving. We're getting out now." But the doll lifted its tiny hand, and every faceless figure stilled instantly, like puppets whose strings had been pulled taut. A single shape stepped forward, slightly taller than the rest, softer around the edges, its head tilted toward the mother. The cold around her deepened. "She's choosing," the girl murmured. The mother's knees buckled. She grabbed the wall to stay standing. The father rushed toward her. "Take me instead. Whatever you want, take me." The doll turned its face toward him, and his voice died in his throat. The father collapsed to one knee, gasping, frost blooming across his lips, his eyelashes turning white. His heat was being pulled from him in violent bursts, as though invisible hands were clawing the warmth straight from his chest. "No," the mother screamed, throwing herself at him, but the moment she touched him, she felt it too, like someone pressing their palm into her heart and squeezing the warmth out. The pale figures shuddered eagerly. The doll's head twisted impossibly far and fixed its glassy eyes on the mother. The girl watched, calm as snowfall. "She says she knows now." The faceless children moved as one, flowing around the parents like a tide. The mother felt their cold brush her ankles, her arms, her face. Something tugged at her breath, something tasted her heat. Then they stopped. The doll's hand lowered. The cold snapped back like a rubber band. The mother collapsed, her lungs burning with returning warmth. The father fell beside her, shaking. The pale figures turned, not toward them, toward the girl. The girl smiled softly. "I told you, it was supposed to be her." The mother crawled forward, reaching for her daughter. "No, no, please!" But the figures didn't touch the girl. They bowed. Every one of them, tipping their smooth, blank heads toward her, as if greeting someone long awaited. The doll's lips parted wider, the crack along her cheek deepening. "She says I'm not the vessel," the girl murmured, her voice light, dreamy. "I'm the keeper, the one who guides them back." The mother froze. The girl stood slowly, stepping away from her parents, arms open. The doll dangled from her fingers like a scepter. "The colony caretaker died. They needed a new one." She smiled with unsettling serenity. "They found me." The pale children gathered around her. Their cold no longer reached the parents, only circled the girl like a protective halo. "Don't worry," she said gently. "They don't want your heat anymore. They just needed to know I could lead them." The father, still heaving, managed to whisper, "Lead them where?" The girl tilted her head toward the dark forest outside. Home. And then she walked, calmly, barefoot, toward the front door. It unlatched by itself. The pale figures followed her out like shadows trailing a lantern. Snow swallowed their shapes as they disappeared into the pines, their soft footsteps fading into the night. The door closed quietly behind them. The house warmed. The lights steadied. The parents were left on the floor, trembling, alive, stunned, and achingly alone. They never saw the girl again, but sometimes, in the dead of winter, they hear small, polite taps at the door. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more, as if someone is checking to see whether the warmth inside needs to be collected again.